There's a lot of scenarios where people will actually wear watches, or in this case, Omegas, on their wrist to be able to have an extra layer of protection against danger. For instance, in Mexico City, kidnappings are pretty popular, and I have heard of people that specifically wear watches, in this case, Omegas, so in case they were ever to get in trouble or potential kidnappers, they can pull the watch off their wrist and use it to barter for their life. What's up, guys? My name is Chris Warrens. I'm the founder of Warrior Time. We are full-time watch dealers, been doing it since 2017. Additionally, I have 3 other companies. We do consulting, I have a nonprofit for veterans, and I have some real estate. However, we are focused on educating when it comes to timepieces and adding value to you on these shows. So let's get into the show. All right, guys, today we're going to talk about why to start with an Omega. There's a lot of really cool things about Omegas, and I'm going to highlight a few of them for you here, starting with the very low barrier of entry. On the secondary market, Omegas can be found for like $1,500, even less, but $1,500 does have a decent amount of options. $1,500 to $2,000 is basically the barrier of entry for Omega, and there are a lot of examples of older Seamasters and Speedmasters too, to a degree, that you can find at this price point rather than buying brand new. The interesting part about this barrier of entry when it comes to Omega is if you bring your budget up to say $3,000 to $4,000, it actually opens up a lot of doors for you with a lot of options, very new options. And sometimes if you can find a really good buy, you can find brand new Omegas at this more so $4,000 price point, because Omegas in most cases do sell for under MSRP on the secondary market. So for instance, one of my first Omegas, I think it was my first one, was a Seamaster 300M on rubber. And the MSRP for that watch now on rubber, I believe, is $5,600. Then the MSRP was a little bit less. I believe it was $5,200. MSRPs have gone up over the years. But anyways, the point being is, you can find brand new Seamaster 300Ms on rubber for less than $4,000 if you find a really good deal. And that being over $1,000 off of MSRP, I think this is a great example of why Omega is a good place to start. Additionally, at this low barrier of entry price point, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, depending on how you look at it. As long as you buy right, your money is safe for the most part. A slight degree up or down, depending on if the market rises, which is pretty much unlikely, but it could very little, and if the market dips a little bit. But for the most part, at this price point, Omega, your money is pretty safe if you get a really good buy on an Omega like we just discussed. All right, the second reason why to start with Omega, and this is common for a lot of brands, but Omegas are very tradable. They're like super tradable. Very often, people will trade us their Omega to trade up higher into, say, a Breitling, potentially, not all the time, or a Rolex is usually the next move after an Omega. So let's say you spend $3,000 on a Seamaster and your money's pretty much safe there, and you call me up or send me an email and you're like, hey Chris, I would like a Rolex Submariner 116610LN. Can I trade you my Seamaster plus cash for it? And we would have a conversation, and it doesn't have to be with me, but with another dealer, you would have a conversation, and they would most likely pay you very close to what you spent on that $3,000 Omega and take it on trade crediting you for about what you paid for it, and all you'd have to do is come up with the rest of the cash for the next watch that you're desiring in this case or in this example. Omegas are very tradable, and they're a very good step towards maybe a Rolex or beyond. It doesn't have to be Rolex. I'm just using it as an example for this. All right, the third reason why to start with an Omega, I think a lot of people miss this part, which is it's cash, for lack of better terms. It's not cash sitting in your safe or in your bank account. It's cash on your wrist. And as long as you buy properly, which for the most part you can do with an Omega, your cash is just on your wrist. So people really don't see the Omega for what they actually are, which is cash on your wrist. So there's a lot of scenarios where people will actually wear watches, or in this case, Omegas on their wrist, to be able to have an extra layer of protection against danger. For instance, in Mexico City, kidnappings are pretty popular, and I have heard of people that specifically wear watches, in this case, Omegas. So in case they were ever to get in trouble or potential kidnappers, they can pull the watch off their wrist and use it to barter for their life. Additionally, a lot of special operation forces, a lot of operators of all different branches wear timepieces, in this case Omegas. In case they're ever kidnapped, they can actually take their watch off the wrist and barter for their life with it. Now, it doesn't have to be to this extreme. You could take the Omega off your wrist at a poker game because you want to up the ante. Or recently, a friend of mine told me that one of his customers was delinquent and he owed him $18,000. And his customer tried to trade him a watch to offset the price of the delinquency. And my friend called me. He's like, hey, what's this thing worth? The guy's saying 10 grand. And I said, no, it's worth more like $4,000. But the point is, it's cash. And looking at it as such, rather than spending your money, more so moving your money to the cash on your wrist, is something that I think a lot of people miss and is really important when it comes to Omegas. All right, so that's 3 reasons why I would recommend, or actually saying better, to start with an Omega. Low barrier of entry, very tradable, and cash on your wrist. Now, there's a lot more, but these are the top 3 picks, in my opinion, to be able to educate on one of the coolest brands on the market, Omega, which was put on the map for the most part by James Bond. So guys, if you have any questions, drop a comment below. I enjoy talking about watches, but before you go, make sure you subscribe. Definitely subscribe and hit that like button so the next time we drop some fire, I'll catch you there.